Okay, I think we just started. So, kind of new to this. So, first of all, I guess in the opening statement, what I want to say is that I don't believe Trump is racist. I think calling Trump racist is unfair. I think that the media and the way they portray him is highly unfair towards him. In this debate, what I'm hoping we're going to have some rational discussions with the backup proof of showing that he's racist, because so far what I've seen is actually showing quite the opposite. What I think is that the media and the leftists are kind of trying to portray Trump as racist so much that they're trying to fit what he's saying, kind of stretch it as much as possible, and then trying to fit it as a narrative, versus actually looking what he's saying and looking into his message. That's why I do have a problem with that, because a lot of the stuff that he said resonated with a lot of people, but not because they were racist, like everybody wants to believe, but because they, to some extent, experienced a lot of this firsthand. So, with that said, I am switching over to you. Switch.
Hear me? Is that better? Okay, cool. Let's just go without headphones. We're muted anyway, so it's fine. Yeah, so look, I think that your claim that potentially people might be drawing some kind of conclusions on narratives from things that have been said and extrapolating too much might be true in some circumstances. So, but I think that just the last, for Trump's entire lifetime, there's been just numerous accounts of him acting in such a way that is consistent with holding racially discriminatory beliefs. And so what I will attempt to do for this debate is just list a number of those things. And then if you think any of those are unfair conclusions, we can talk about those specifically. So I think that just to kind of provide a definition for what we're talking about, I think a fair way to categorize racism or racism beliefs would be the belief that a group, by virtue of their race, is a lesser type of human being. And ultimately, what I'll aim to prove is that all of the actions that Trump has done and over a time frame have been consistent with that. But I also want to potentially argue about another avenue to which you might claim that it is unfair to call Trump a racist, which is the idea of that, like, maybe this isn't fair grounds within the context of political discourse about the kind of thing that we should be discussing, right? That it's like, it muddies the discourse or some other sort of thing. The point that I just want to speak to that about is that being critical of people in possessions of power is super important, right? Like, accountability is really the only thing that changes like a democracy, but that prevents a democracy from being a tyranny. Like, you really need to hold people in positions of power into account. And I think to a large degree, criticizing them on multiple different axes, including accusations of racism or any other things, is perfectly legitimate. And I would say that, within the spirit of things like free speech, that we should ultimately, that for the people in the most positions of power, i.e. the president, we should hold them the most accountable. And even if, some of the claims might be slightly outrageous or superlative, that we should still be allowed to use them in political discourse. And the reason that I bring this up is because this is something that Trump clearly believes, given that he was one of the main propagators of the birther movement that advocated for Barack Obama wanting to show his birth certificate. So I have about 40 seconds left. So let's just run about through the ways that he's been racially discriminatory towards Black people, and then I can go over the other groups through the rest of his life. So there's a large proponent of the birther movement, something that called out, Obama for being a Muslim born in Kenya, despite there being no evidence to the contrary. The fact that he seemingly had a foreign-sounded name and had Hussein in his name seemed to be enough evidence for that, right? Trump frequently retweets white supremacists who tweet falsified claims about racial crime statistics without bothering to check them, seemingly because they fit a narrative that Black people commit crime. The Justice Department back in the 80s successfully sued his company twice for racially discriminatory policies against his tenants, and he called for the imprisonment of the Central Park Five back in 1989.
Okay, great. So let's hold on to let me actually start talking about it first. So we're talking about being racially prejudiced about, let's first start with the hold people accountable. And you said it's fair to say that to throw the accusations in some people because we want to hold them to the highest esteem possible. Well, to me, it's actually, there's two ways how we can say holding people accountable. Are we holding people accountable only by their words or also by their actions as well? Because with that said, I believe Obama was probably the most religious, like the most anti-Muslim president possible in the United States. And the reason why I'm saying it is because he went to a lot of wars with a lot of different Muslim countries. He started more wars than even Bush did. But what I'm trying to bring him out to the point is that nobody held him accountable over his wars. But then we're seeing Trump being accountable over tweets. So with that said, is what I'm trying to say here is that I believe we should hold people accountable, and I do believe that the figure should be more or less presidential. However, I also big actual proponent is actions should speak always louder than words. And in that case, the actions of a Trump was nearly racial driven, as I see others, in terms of him he became a president. So is it okay to throw in accusations towards the people? I believe it's not okay unless there's a solid ground. Even if it's a shaky ground, I don't think it is right to do that because it will damage a person's reputation. So the second thing I want to say is that Barack Obama and holding his the birther movement and holding him accountable. So let's see. First of all, what I want to say is Trump has a lot of ridiculously big claims about all other presidents and how they're pretty much, I'm sorry to say this, pardon for my French, screwing America and how they're not true Americans. Yet for some reason, when he said things about Barack Hussein Obama, those things became racially driven. So I think again we're trying to feed a narrative that we want to paint Trump as a racist because he said a few things about Hussein Obama, but we're letting him slide when he said also lots of discussing things towards other presidential candidates and the presidents as well. So now he was sued twice. Yes, I was actually looking into those suits, and as far as I know, those actually courts did not accomplish anything to even portray that he was prejudiced. The thing he was prejudiced about is actually lower income families more that happen to be a predominantly black or African American than actually racially driven. I think he's a businessman, and in this case, he was working on economy of scale.
Okay, a couple of responses to your stuff before I continue to elaborate with the examples. So you say that, you know, in context to the way that Barack Obama, you know, potentially promoted this kind of like American supremacist attitude towards the continuation of the wars in the Middle East. I would say that holding someone accountable for holding racially about the supremacy of America, then Trump is entirely consistent with that, given that military spending and also carried out huge expansions of the drone. You see other ridiculous things about disqualifies him from being called a racist when he specific thing about Barack Obama. Ridiculous. Can't be an American. In regards to the company, maybe it's the case that it was about like, but there were also a number of suits his father and you know, companies within his sort of brand. It starts to seem a little bit suspicious that, you know, economic lines, it's all on examples of the way the whole campaign, the take a knee with the black protesting against police, who are very vocal about the fact advocated free speech, is calling for from their jobs. If you are hypocritical on the basis of race, express their freedom to lose their jobs to be able to do so. It's just along racial lines. Let's talk about discriminatory towards Mexican people. Continuously on the rhetoric of that the people Mexico immigrations is the case, like they're racist. I assume some, but right, that is like textbook definition of bigotry. Entire group as one thing and then make the exception, but as a racial character that can hearing, you know,
Yeah. Okay, so let's start. First of all, switch. I really don't buy into the statements like, well, his lawsuit seems suspicious, almost equally possible. Those are not statements. Those are divisions on those things that we can come up with our mind rather than actual facts. So saying, well, it looks like his lawsuit could possibly seem racially driven, that's not a statement. There should be a clear cut. Is he a racist because those lawsuits prove that he was racist or not? Now the second, I'm really happy that you brought take a knee. This is so racist. I have absolutely no idea. What Trump said is, those sons of bitches should be fired. And then he yells, fired, right? He said about people taking the knee. What the left is trying to do is they're trying to say that he meant black people who were taking the knee. But Trump said all of the NFL players who took the knee, whites, Hispanics, blacks. It happened to be that NFL is predominantly dominated by African American people. But he did not say those black people taking the knee. He said those sons of bitches, and he meant everybody who was taking the knee. So that means that what is the leftist think of black people? They think that they are black athletes. They think that they're unpatriotic. They think that they don't care about this country, right? They don't care about the veterans, which is not the case because it is completely racist thing to say. Because no, there's a lot of black athletes who stood up, who support the flag and anthem of the United States. So saying this is racist in my opinion, but completely in the other pendulum. And then you said it also insinuates what that white people can say, have a right of freedom of speech and black don't. Find me the law, find me whatever he said that clear cut, and I would debate with you and I would agree with that. However, just saying, well, he insinuates that the white athletes can have a freedom of speech, but black don't, by saying those sons of bitches should be fired, that's a bit of a stretch. And this is where I'm saying it is not fair because people want to paint Trump as a racist. And therefore, they come up with some bullshit divisions in their heads saying, therefore, there's a proof that he's racist. And last thing I want to touch base on the Mexican. If you can pass me the mic, that might take me a minute to do so. So, first of all, Mexican is not a race, it's a country. So what he said, especially, he said it about the country. When this country is sending their people, they're not sending their best. Again, it's not racially driven. It's not racially motivated by any means possible. There's a lot of Spanish origins Mexican people who are white. Like, they're white. They're whiter than you. And then there's a lot of brown Mexicans as well. He did not discriminate. He said, no, those brown Mexicans are coming in. No.
Okay. It's difficult because I'm just going to try to. That will help. You said, like, at least said those black sons of bitches disqualifies them. But you in this debate speak louder than what seems claim that really has to single out individual and identify that it to be categorized. The take a knee protest is black protesting against police brutality within Africa. Tackling black, and why we know that Donald Trump says that white people are okay to protest this thing, but black people aren't okay to protest. Is their job for protesting the fact that there is police brutality? When in an earlier this year of Charlottesville, where neo-Nazis torches through the street of Charlottesville and chanting slogans, the very lukewarm response that he has, there's like, there's been some on both supremacists advocating for white supremacists, and Trump comes out and says, you know what, some things on both sides. That is the one, at least with that group. Fair to say that is with of a white supremacist who are at least premise that white people to other kinds of people, and that is a state. The thing you want to say is that like Mexicans aren't a race. Like, yes, but all the really without a difference. People who are identifying with of a different skin tone, they don't fit the, and that is why they.
Okay, so let's start. So let's talk about, first of all, NFL. Predominantly of them are black protesters protesting about police brutality. So the Trump saying is, you are disrespecting our nation, you're disrespecting our flag, you're disrespecting our anthem. Get on your knees, and if you want to make a statement about police brutality, you are free to do so. However, the clear-cut, even NFL rules say you have to stand up for the national anthem. Again, he didn't say those black athletes. He said those sons of bitches, and he grouped them all together. Again, no evidence of that. Now, let's talk about the neo-Nazis, for example, because quite honestly, I don't understand. This is a very weak neo-Nazi movement, in my opinion. And I'm not saying it because, look at me, I'm actually mixed race. But what I'm trying to say here is that they're yelling, Jews will not replace us, and then they're yelling, one nation, stop immigration. That's two things that are like, not even saying a lot of white supremacists, but I am condoning their actions to the biggest degree possible. But what I'm trying to say here is that there was violence on the two sides, and he was right to pointing it out. For some reason, why do we need to turn the blind eye to a lot of stuff where a lot of Trump supporters, a lot of people who supported Trump for bringing the back economy, for building the economy and country back, all of a sudden they get assaulted just because the color of the skin. And in a lot of those cases, that's a definition of racism, in my opinion, as well. So with that said, is again, him saying, he said it multiple times, I condone and I don't support neo-Nazis. He said it multiple times. And he said, however, you need to look at the violence on the both sides. Again, we're trying to make a stretch that he's a racist, like he's condoned neo-Nazis before his election, after Charlottesville. Like how many times you should say it? Maybe you should start a speech saying, hi guys, dear American people, I want to talk to you, but first of all, fuck those neo-Nazis, just to make sure, just to be clear. You have to probably repeat it every single day for the media to understand that. Now, about Mexican people and the distinction. Again, we're trying to grow the straws here. It's not a really clear argument. When the guy says about the country, all of a sudden we're trying to connect it about the race. Again, it seems like people that are listening to Trump, they're listening to his narrative is, yes, illegal immigration is terrible, and I would like to make an argument proving you how. My family was first affected by illegal immigration, and I'd say, no, it's not good. I don't believe illegal immigration is good. I believe that people who are breaking the law by coming to this country illegally are going to be prone to break more laws in the country that they're already illegally in. So, but with that said, is no distinction on the skin color. So again, I want to hear clear-cut evidence of him.
Again, your needs to specifically, this skin color is what I am denouncing these people on. But as we both agreed at the earlier of this debate, like the actions of an individual speak louder than their words. He can come out and say, I'm not a racist, right? But we all know that person who's like, when they get accused of racism, say, oh, no, I'm not a racist, right? I have a black friend. Qualified as being called a racist. look at what he's done, right? He frequently that are provided by false, racial statistics, right? He surrounds himself with people that are sympathetic towards white goals, like Steve Bannon or Jeff Sessions, who was very kind of like the KKK, but then I found out it's now. Now maybe that's a joke, but given his voting record that he has failed to vote in favor of any kind of legislation that would help minorities in America, seems like might be telling the truth. So just the fact that he's come out and said, I'm not a racist, I'm the least racist person there, is not enough being a with people like who chief editor at a white is genuinely antithetical of white supremacy. White seems odd that you would fall your within a position entirely just because I have some also in regard to Muslim rhetoric that he went on the campaign trail, right? Now, given the like I might have distinction is inherent, right? Someone fears that they're going to be a terrorist. It's not that they're so the way in which those two things are tied, right? But you look at the way in he says, I want to ban all.
Okay, so let's get it started. First of all, again, you said actions should speak louder than words. So is tweet constituted as a word, or is it constituted as an actions? Because for some reason, as you're basically saying that the Twitter is words, right? So with that said, let's talk about the actions. He dated an African American. He employs a lot of minorities among African American and Hispanic. And with that said, what are the actions speak louder? Him retweeting the tweet about the crime statistics without checking it, which I don't think the president should do. Completely 100% agree. So what is the bigger action, that or personally employing a lot of those minorities in his companies? Again, which of the actions are more? Let's see. So Jeff Sessions, again, we're making a stretch about the joke. And when you said about helping minorities, there's a different way we can look about helping minorities, because you cannot say that giving the extra more welfare funds to minorities is helping them, because it's actually been proven to do quite the opposite. So with that said, we need to look what exactly you said that he voted against about helping the minorities in this case scenario. Again, I don't think minorities are these helpless people that everybody's trying to portray them to be. So again, actions speak louder than words. And let's look at what the actions of Obama was compared to the Muslims, compared to the Islam versus the Trump. So now about Muslim and Islamophobic rhetoric. So with that said, is first of all, that's where I guess we can draw the categorization in terms of, well, what about the stereotypes? The stereotypes there for a reason or what not? Personally, I'm a Russian Christian Orthodox, and I lived among Muslims for 15 years. And I have scars on my body to show that, hey, it's all not very hunky-dory living there, being a Christian, being on the other side. Okay, when Muslims hear being offended by some tweets, trust me, being Christian on the other side is a whole lot worse. And quite frankly, a lot of Christians who come from those countries are coming here to say, let's pause it. And I'm not saying it from the biggest like Jerry Scott having about the Muslims. I think educated Muslims are great for this country, but also I was thinking that the tribal Muslims are the worst possible species for any society. Uneducated, very tribal, very driven oriented. And we can go into the Quran and say how is it, but again, Islamophobic is not racist. How is everybody trying to make this strongman argument? So saying stuff about Islam and ideology that you don't believe in doesn't make a person racist. Okay, and I will probably, there's 12 seconds left. I'll continue that for the other 3 minutes or this final statement.
All right, fair enough. Look, claims like, oh, he's dated and employed minorities, therefore he can't be a racist, right? Like, we both agree the definition of a racist is someone who holds by virtue of their race is being lesser, right? That's not holding. You know who also had like a within their like right? Like you could have someone who works for you that doesn't necessarily from being a racist, right? Comments about like Muslims and stuff. Look, speaks well to the rhetoric of the tribal. A good evidence racially fine. Just something that is that people that within the Middle East, specifically by the travel ban, were the kind of have that it's implement some kind of stringent policy, try to keep out. The problem is that America, the strict that extraordinarily get into the United States. You have so much as a history in any other country, right? But there are countries who have these tribes who seek to do people and are really bad. That very much true, but there are then also in those countries Christians, Muslims who are looking and places in the United States. And the fact that it was tried to be implemented by Trump during the early stages of his presidency, the nuance that in these countries who were affected by these, people who held ideologies and wanted to do is to treat the group as from this country. You order.
Okay, so first of all, again, you went back to the definition of the racism is believing that your race is superior or inferior because of color of the skin. So, and then again, we're going back to that. So you think that him retweeting the statistics about minorities being a crime rate by white supremacists, he's definitely racist. But when he employs the minorities, oh, no, you can employ minorities but still be a racist, right? Again, it's a double standard that I don't see practical. So with that said is, let's touch base about the Muslims, Islam. Islam is not a race, okay? If you talk about black Muslims, then and you say, oh, he's being racist because he's trying to ban black Muslims. Well, not all black people are Muslims. Not all brown people are Muslim also. He didn't ban anybody from India. He didn't ban anybody from Latin America. His latest ban, he wanted to touch Venezuela. It's also because of political instability, not because of, again, any other, because the color of the skin. So with that said is, him banning those countries is exactly not racially driven, because otherwise he would ban the India or South America. With that said, also, you're talking about the very stringent process. It is a very stringent process. I happen to go through that process. I understand that. But when you're looking at, there are also Muslims that are looking to flee. Well, how do you actually separate a tribal person from the person who is trying to flee? And the whole system was actually, as far as I understand, was backed up. And all he did is said, hey, give us 2 months so we can catch up on the vetting system and then move forward. That's exactly